At Christmas dinner, my daughter told 40 people I didn't deserve presents. My name is James Wilson, and I thought I'd raised her better. For 29 years, I watched her live a lifestyle I quietly funded. Designer clothes, luxury car, downtown loft. She thought it came from her stepfather's success. When she publicly called me a financial failure who never contributed anything meaningful to anyone, I made one phone call that changed everything. Within 60 seconds, her credit card started declining, her car payment bounced, and her entire world collapsed in front of everyone who just watched her humiliate me. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't argue, I simply pulled out my phone. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. This story starts 3 days before Christmas, at the Scottsdale Country Club, where my daughter was about to learn the most expensive lesson of her life. The first sign I wasn't respected came when Vicky refused to pick me up.
"Dad, can you just meet us there? Thomas is driving the Porsche and there's no room." Thomas Miller, my ex-wife Catherine's husband for the past 8 years, owner of 3 BMW dealerships, the man my daughter calls her real provider. I drove my 2011 Honda Civic to the country club, 13 years old, 187,000 miles. The valet looked embarrassed for me. Inside, the annual Christmas party was in full swing. Crystal chandeliers reflected off marble floors. The Fraser fir stood 18 feet tall, decorated with $12,000 worth of ornaments. I know because I heard Thomas bragging about the cost to the Hartwell family. I found our table. Vicky sat between Catherine and Thomas, wearing a $2,800 Chanel dress. I know the price because she posted it on Instagram 3 hours earlier. #blessed life Christmas glam thanks Thomas. Hi, Dad.
She barely looked up from her phone. The second sign came when Thomas started his speech. Catherine and I are so proud of Vicky's success. Financial independence at 29? That's what good guidance looks like. Applause around the table. Vicky beamed. Of course, having smart investments helps, Thomas continued. The trust fund her maternal grandfather set up has grown beautifully. We've taught her to be responsible with money. More applause. I said nothing. Eleanor Hartwell, sitting across from me, raised an eyebrow. She'd known my grandmother personally. She remembered who actually left money to whom. "James, you're quiet tonight," Catherine said. "How's the job search going?" 7 months since the accounting firm laid me off. 7 months of interviews and rejections. At 52, apparently I was overqualified for most positions and outdated for others. "Still looking," I said. "Well, maybe it's time to consider something more realistic," Thomas said. "There's always demand for bookkeepers, small businesses, less prestigious but steady work." I watched my daughter nod in agreement. The daughter I'd secretly supported through college, MBA school, and every single month of her adult life. She lived in a $4,200 per month loft in downtown Scottsdale, drove an $89,000 BMW M340i, wore designer everything, traveled to Europe twice a year, posted constantly about her self-made success and financial independence. None of them knew the truth. For 127 consecutive months, on the 15th of every month, $12,000 had transferred from an account I controlled to accounts she accessed. College tuition, graduate school, car payments, rent, credit cards, insurance, groceries, vacations, shopping sprees. $3.2 million over 10.5 years, all invisible to her, all anonymous. My grandmother's inheritance had been carefully structured to appear as if it came from Catherine's side of the family. The lie was Catherine's idea during our divorce. "She needs stability," Catherine had said. "Let her think it comes from my father's estate." I'd agreed. I wanted my daughter to have the best life possible. I didn't need credit. But watching her now, laughing at Thomas's jokes while wearing clothes I'd inadvertently paid for, sitting in a chair at a club where I'd personally covered the membership fees for 5 years. The third sign was the cruelest. "You know what I'm most grateful for this Christmas?" Vicky announced to the table, finally understanding the difference between people who provide value and people who just exist. She looked directly at me. "Some people build things, create wealth, take responsibility. Other people just drift through life expecting others to carry them." Thomas nodded approvingly. "That's wisdom, sweetheart." I excused myself to the restroom. In the mirror, I saw a man in a $45 shirt from Target facing a choice. Keep enabling this delusion, or finally demand the respect I'd never asked for but always deserved. When I returned to the table, I noticed Eleanor Hartwell watching me carefully. She remembered my grandmother's funeral. She remembered who inherited what. But Vicky was just getting started. The consequences of staying silent were becoming crystal clear. First, my reputation. Every person at this table, and they'd tell others, now believed I was a deadbeat father who'd contributed nothing to my daughter's success. In a town like Scottsdale, reputation mattered. These people controlled business networks, job opportunities, social connections. Being labeled as the guy who couldn't provide would follow me everywhere. Second, Vicky herself. She was 29 years old and had never learned the value of money, work, or gratitude. She genuinely believed her lifestyle came from her own intelligence and Thomas's guidance. She had no idea she was living on borrowed money. My money. Without ever facing real consequences, she'd continue down this path forever. The tipping point came when Dr. Harrison, the club president, joined our conversation. "Thomas, congratulations on Vicky's success. Must be proud to have supported such an independent young woman." "Well, we believe in teaching responsibility," Thomas replied. "Can't coddle them forever, right, James?" All eyes turned to me. Dr. Harrison extended his hand for a polite shake. "James Wilson, I don't think we've met. What line of work are you in?" Before I could answer, Vicky jumped in. "Dad's between jobs right now. Has been for a while. Different priorities, I guess." The dismissal in her voice was unmistakable. Dr. Harrison's handshake became noticeably weaker. "I see. Well, the economy's been tough." Catherine leaned forward. "James was in accounting, but you know how that industry's changing. Automation, offshore work, hard for someone his age to keep up." "Mom's right," Vicky added. "Dad's very traditional in his thinking, not really adapted to modern financial strategies. I watched my own daughter systematically destroy my reputation in front of the country club president, the man who knew every business owner, lawyer, and executive in the area." Eleanor Hartwell cleared her throat. "James, didn't your grandmother leave you something substantial? I remember Helen Wilson being quite well off." Vicky laughed. "Grandma Helen? Dad, you never mentioned inheriting anything, though I guess if you had money you wouldn't be." She gestured vaguely at my outfit. The stakes crystallized in that moment. If I stayed silent, I'd be forever known as the failed father who couldn't provide. My daughter would continue living a lie, never learning real values. Thomas would keep taking credit for generosity that wasn't his, and Catherine would continue perpetuating a deception that served everyone except the truth. But revealing the truth meant destroying my daughter's world. Everything she believed about her independence, her success, her financial security, all of it would crumble. Her social media presence, her confidence, her entire identity was built on a foundation of my anonymous support. "The interesting thing about inherited wealth," Eleanor said carefully, "is how it shapes character. Helen Wilson was very thoughtful about how she structured her estate, very concerned about teaching the right lessons." I met Eleanor's eyes. She was giving me an opening. Thomas wasn't finished showing off. "Of course, we've been fortunate. Vicky's trust fund has performed excellently, up 38% over the past 5 years. Smart investing and careful management." He had no idea. The growth he was claiming credit for came from my active management of the funds. I'd spent hours researching investments, rebalancing portfolios, ensuring the money lasted and grew. Thomas thought trust funds managed themselves. 38%? Dr. Harrison seemed impressed. "That's exceptional performance. Who's your fund manager?" "Private family office," Thomas said smoothly. "Very exclusive. They don't take on just anyone." Complete fabrication. There was no family office. There was just me, managing investments through a private wealth management firm that sent statements to Catherine's address to maintain the illusion. Vicky beamed with pride. "Thomas taught me everything about financial responsibility, how to budget, save, invest wisely. I'm probably the only person my age who's completely debt-free and building real wealth. Debt-free because I'd paid off her credit cards monthly for years, building wealth with money I'd provided. Learning responsibility from a man who'd never contributed a dollar to her accounts." The final straw came when Dr. Harrison asked about my plans. "James, what's your next move? Any prospects?" Before I could answer, Vicky spoke for me again. "Dad's always been more of a dreamer than a doer. Right, Mom? Always talking about what he could accomplish, but never really following through. Some people just aren't built for success." The cruelty was breathtaking. My own daughter funded entirely by my sacrifice, publicly declaring me incapable of success. Catherine nodded sadly. "James has always struggled with practical decisions. It's why our marriage didn't work out." I felt something shift inside me, a calm certainty I hadn't experienced in years. The stakes were clear. Continue enabling this lie and watch my daughter become someone I didn't recognize, or finally demand the truth and respect I'd earned through a decade of silent sacrifice. I reached into my jacket pocket and felt the leather portfolio I'd brought. Inside were documents that would change everything. But first, she'd have to push me just a little further. Vicky wasn't done. "You know what's funny?" she said.
loud enough for nearby tables to hear. People always assume successful families just happen naturally. Like success runs in DNA or something. She gestured toward Thomas. But real success comes from having the right guidance, learning from people who actually understand money, investments, business strategy. Thomas nodded modestly. Well, we try to set a good example. Exactly. Some people provide value, create opportunities, build wealth. Others just, she looked at me again, drift along hoping someone else will carry them. Mrs. Patterson from the adjacent table had turned to listen. So had the Johnsons. My daughter was creating an audience for my humiliation. Take my father, for example.
She was warming up now, feeding off the attention. 52 years old, laid off 7 months ago, still looking for the right opportunity. She made air quotes around the phrase. Vicky, Catherine said quietly, maybe we should... No, Mom, I think this is important. Dr. Harrison, you run businesses, right? Hire people? Would you hire someone who's been unemployed for 7 months? Someone who drives a 13-year-old car and shops at Target? Dr. Harrison looked uncomfortable. Well, employment gaps can be concerning depending on circumstances. Right, because successful people create their own circumstances. They don't make excuses. I felt 30 pairs of eyes on me. The conversations at nearby tables had stopped. Even the wait staff were listening. My point is, Vicky continued, I'm grateful to have learned what real responsibility looks like, what it means to earn your success instead of expecting handouts. The word handouts hit like a physical blow. Handouts? I said quietly.
Well, yeah. Dad, be honest. How many times have you asked Mom for money since the divorce? How many times have you hinted around about needing help with rent or car repairs? I'd never asked Catherine for a cent. In fact, the opposite was true. I'd quietly covered several of her expenses over the years, including her mother's funeral costs and her brother's medical bills. I've never asked your mother for money, I said. Vicky laughed. Come on. The unemployed accountant who drives a Honda Civic never needs financial help? Please. Thomas joined in. James, there's no shame in needing assistance, but there is shame in not being honest about it. What exactly are you accusing me of? My voice remained calm, but something in my tone made Eleanor sit up straighter. I'm not accusing you of anything, Vicky said. I'm just stating facts. You're broke. You've been broke for years.
Mom and Thomas have had to help out, and now you sit here acting like you deserve equal respect at this table. The lie was so complete, so perfectly inverted, that I almost admired its audacity. Help out how? I asked. Oh, don't make me spell it out. She was getting more animated now, playing to her audience. The Christmas gifts, the birthday money, the emergency loans that never get paid back. None of this was true. Every Christmas gift she'd received since age 18 had been purchased with trust fund money I managed. Every birthday, every graduation, every celebration. When exactly did you loan me money, Vicky? Indirectly, Dad. Through Mom, through Thomas. When you can't make your rent, where do you think the help comes from? I'd owned my apartment building for 4 years. My rent was actually property management income. And where does Thomas get this money he supposedly loans me? Thomas shifted uncomfortably. Well, I wouldn't call them loans exactly. No, please explain, I pressed. Walk me through this assistance you've provided. Vicky jumped back in. The point isn't the specific details. The point is that some people produce wealth and some people consume it. Some people create value and some people drain it. And which am I? Do you really want me to answer that? Here? In front of everyone? Eleanor Hartwell leaned forward. I think I'd like to hear the answer. Vicky looked surprised, but pleased to have such an attentive audience. Fine. Dad, you've never contributed anything meaningful to anyone's life. Not to Mom's, not to mine, not to anyone's at this table. You're a 52-year-old failed accountant who lives in a crappy apartment, drives a beater car, and shops at discount stores. You have no investments, no savings, no assets worth mentioning. She was building momentum now, her voice carrying across the room. Meanwhile, I've built a successful life through smart decisions and hard work. I'm completely financially independent. I own my own condo, drive a luxury car, travel internationally, and I've never had to ask anyone for help because I learned financial responsibility from people who actually understand money. The applause from nearby tables was scattered, but audible. So yes, to answer your question directly, you consume value, I create it. You drain resources, I generate them. You're exactly the kind of person who thinks the world owes them something for just existing. Dr. Harrison looked deeply uncomfortable. Several other guests had stopped eating to watch the spectacle. I sat perfectly still, watching my daughter destroy me in front of half the country club, watching her claim independence she'd never earned, wealth she'd never created, and success that existed only because of sacrifices she knew nothing about. Are you finished? I asked calmly. I'm just being honest. Someone needs to tell you the truth.
I nodded slowly. You're absolutely right. Someone needs to tell the truth. I reached into my jacket and pulled out the brown leather portfolio, 2.5 inches thick with documents I'd never planned to use. Eleanor Hartwell's eyes widened. She recognized the portfolio from my grandmother's estate proceedings 23 years ago. The truth is very important, Vicky, especially when it comes to money. The atmosphere shifted when I placed the portfolio on the table. It wasn't dramatic, just a simple leather folder worn smooth from years of careful storage. But Eleanor Hartwell recognized it immediately. Her sharp intake of breath caused several others to look over. Is that? Eleanor started, then stopped herself. What's in the folder, Dad? Vicky asked, her tone dismissive. More job applications? I didn't answer immediately.
Instead, I looked around the table, making eye contact with each person who'd just witnessed my character assassination. Dr. Harrison, Thomas, Catherine, Vicky, Eleanor, the Pattersons and Johnsons from nearby tables, still listening. Before we continue this conversation about who creates value and who consumes it, I said quietly, I think everyone should have accurate information. My phone buzzed. A text message from my wealth management advisor. Monthly transfers completed as scheduled, all accounts current. Call if you need anything. I set the phone face down next to the portfolio. James? Catherine said nervously. Maybe this isn't the time. When is the right time to tell the truth, Catherine? When should our daughter learn where her money actually comes from? Vicky laughed. What money, Dad? My money comes from my trust fund and my smart investments. We've been through this. Have we?
I opened the portfolio slightly, not enough for anyone to see inside, but enough to reveal the thickness of documents within. Tell me about this trust fund. My grandfather on Mom's side set it up before he died. Thomas manages it now. It's grown 38% over 5 years through careful investment strategy. Thomas nodded. Conservative but effective approach. Diversified portfolio, regular rebalancing. What's the principal amount? I interrupted. Thomas hesitated. Well, that's private family information. Humor me. Rough figure. I don't see why. Because I'm curious about the math. 38% growth over 5 years on what starting amount? And with what monthly distributions? The questions hung in the air. Thomas looked to Catherine for help. James, this isn't appropriate, Catherine said. Isn't it? Our daughter just spent 10 minutes explaining how she's financially independent, and I'm a burden on the family.
I think understanding the actual numbers is very appropriate. Eleanor leaned forward. James, is that Helen's portfolio? The mention of my grandmother's name caused another shift. Several older club members had known Helen Wilson personally. She'd been a founding member, a major donor, a woman of considerable wealth and even greater discretion. Helen Wilson left a substantial estate, Eleanor continued. I remember the funeral. The attorney mentioned provisions for future generations. Vicky looked confused. What does Dad's grandmother have to do with my trust fund? I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. The screen showed multiple account balances, but I kept it angled so no one could see specific numbers. Nothing at all, I said, unless someone wants to verify the math on that 38% growth claim. Thomas was sweating now. I don't carry specific figures in my head. Of course not. That would be impossible since you've never seen the actual account statements. What are you implying? Vicky demanded. Before I could answer, my phone rang. The display showed First National Private Wealth Management. Excuse me, I said, standing. This is about those monthly transfers we discussed. I walked several steps away but remained within earshot. James Wilson speaking. Yes, tomorrow is the 15th. The usual $12,000? To which accounts? Both the living expenses and the credit card payments? Perfect. And the car payment cleared on schedule? I could feel the table's attention focused on my conversation. What about the insurance premiums? Yes, health and auto. Same beneficiary? Victoria Wilson. Excellent. And the investment portfolio rebalancing we discussed? The $3.2 million principal is performing well? Good. I'll review the quarterly statements tomorrow. I ended the call and returned to the table. The silence was absolute. Vicky was staring at me, her face pale. Who was that? My wealth manager. We have some business to discuss tomorrow. Thomas found his voice. James, I think there might be some confusion. Is there? About what specifically? Well, the numbers you mentioned, they don't align with... With what? With the story you've been telling about managing Vicky's investments? Eleanor was watching this exchange with fascination. James, how long has this been going on? What specifically? The monthly transfers, $12,000 to Victoria. 127 months, I said.
Since she turned 18, every 15th of the month, without exception. Vicky's hands were shaking slightly. That's not possible. My money comes from where exactly? Walk me through it. Who set up the trust? What bank holds it? Who makes the investment decisions? Who authorizes the distributions? She looked at Thomas, then at Catherine, then back at me. Thomas manages everything, right, Thomas? Thomas was studying his wine glass like it contained the secrets of the universe. The portfolio sat between us, still unopened, but not for much longer. Vicky regrouped quickly. Whatever doubt had flickered across her face vanished, replaced by the same confident dismissal she'd been wielding all evening. Nice try, Dad, but I'm not falling for whatever game this is. She turned to address the entire listening area, projecting her voice like she was giving a presentation. Everyone, I apologize for this embarrassing display. My father is clearly having some kind of episode. Maybe unemployment stress, maybe something else. But these fantasies about secret wealth are honestly just sad. Murmurs of sympathy rippled through nearby tables. The narrative was shifting back in her favor. Dad, I've seen your apartment. I've seen your car. I know what you wear, where you shop, how you live. The idea that you're secretly some wealthy benefactor is, she paused for effect, genuinely concerning. Maybe you need professional help. Applause from the Patterson table. Vicky was winning the room back. Thomas jumped in to support her. James, I understand this is a difficult time. Job loss, financial pressure. It can affect people in unpredictable ways, but creating elaborate fantasies isn't the answer. What fantasies? I asked. This delusion about managing Vicky's trust fund, about monthly transfers, about investment decisions. James, you don't have access to any of those accounts. You don't have authority over any financial instruments in Vicky's name. Dr. Harrison nodded sympathetically. Sometimes unemployment can trigger compensation behaviors. Vicky sensed total victory. She stood up, commanding the attention of half the dining room. I want everyone to understand something. I love my father, despite his problems. But I will not sit here and listen to him try to take credit for my success through delusional claims about money he doesn't have. More applause. Louder now. I am 29 years old. I am completely financially independent. I earned my MBA through merit scholarships and smart financial planning. I live in a beautiful home, drive a car I can afford, and travel the world through my own hard work and intelligent investment decisions. Standing ovation from 3 tables. My stepfather Thomas has provided guidance, support, and genuine mentorship about wealth building. My mother has given me love and wisdom, but my father... She looked down at me with what appeared to be genuine pity. My father has contributed nothing but problems, and now, apparently, delusions. The room was completely captivated. Even the waitstaff had stopped working to listen. So I want to make something very clear, in front of all these witnesses. Effective immediately, I am cutting all contact with my father. I will not enable his fantasies, accept his excuses, or pretend his failures are anyone else's responsibility. The applause was thunderous now. Dr. Harrison stood, then Thomas, then Catherine. Half the dining room was on their feet. Some people deserve presents at Christmas, Vicky announced, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. Some people deserve respect, love, and gratitude. But some people, she stared directly at me, deserve exactly what their choices have earned them. Nothing. The ovation lasted 30 seconds. Vicky basked in it, accepting congratulations from strangers, hugs from nearby diners, words of support from people who'd never met her before tonight. I sat perfectly still, watching my daughter perform the most thorough character assassination I'd ever witnessed. Watching her claim independence she'd never earned while simultaneously destroying the man who'd actually provided it. When the applause finally died down, she sat back down, flush with victory. Now, she said, still breathing hard from excitement, maybe we can enjoy the rest of our Christmas dinner without any more episodes. The room gradually returned to normal conversation levels. The show was over. Vicky had won decisively, except Eleanor Hartwell wasn't clapping. Vicky, Eleanor said quietly, before you cut contact with your father, shouldn't you at least look at what's in that portfolio? Mrs. Hartwell, with all due respect, I don't need to enable his delusions. It's not about enabling anything. It's about having complete information before making permanent decisions. Thomas intervened. Eleanor, I appreciate your concern, but this is really a family matter. Is it? Because if James actually has been managing a trust fund that supports Victoria, then this whole conversation changes, doesn't it? But that's impossible, Catherine said. The trust was set up by my father's estate. Was it? Eleanor's voice carried decades of authority. Because I was at Helen Wilson's funeral. I heard the attorney reading the will. I remember very specific provisions about discretionary distributions to future descendants. The table fell silent again. James, Eleanor continued, your grandmother left instructions about teaching responsibility and gratitude, didn't she? About ensuring her wealth built character rather than destroying it? I nodded. And she left you discretionary authority over how and when those lessons were delivered? I nodded again. Vicky was looking back and forth between us, her confidence starting to crack. What are you saying? She demanded. Eleanor looked at me. I'm saying your father has been making a choice for the past 10 years. A choice about whether to let you learn responsibility gradually or learn it all at once. She paused. And after what I just witnessed, I think he's decided you're ready for the advanced course. The portfolio sat between us. My phone sat next to it. And for the first time all evening, Vicky looked genuinely afraid. Dad, she said, her voice smaller now, what's in the folder? I looked around the room one more time. 43 people were watching us. 43 witnesses to whatever happened next. The truth, I said simply. And then I opened it. The first document was a copy of my grandmother's original will. I placed it on the table where everyone could see the official letterhead, the legal seals, the formal language of estate planning. Eleanor leaned forward to read over her glasses. To my beloved grandson James William Wilson, I read aloud, I leave the entirety of my estate valued at approximately $2.1 million with the following provisions. Vicky's face went completely white. Said inheritance shall be managed at the sole discretion of James William Wilson with particular attention to teaching fiscal responsibility and gratitude to future generations of the Wilson family. I looked up. The entire room was silent. Should James deem it appropriate, portions of this inheritance may be distributed anonymously to his children, provided such distributions serve to build character rather than destroy it. James shall have complete authority to modify, reduce, or eliminate such distributions based on the recipient's demonstration of gratitude, responsibility, and moral character. Thomas was sweating openly now. Catherine had gone pale. Vicky looked like she might be sick. Grandma Helen left you $2 million? Vicky whispered. 2.1 million. 23 years ago. It's grown considerably since then. I pulled out the next document. A current portfolio statement from First National Private Wealth Management. Current value, $8.3 million. Gasps from multiple tables. Dr. Harrison leaned forward to see the numbers. Of which $3.2 million has been designated as the Victoria Wilson Discretionary Fund, established in January 2016 when she turned 18. I pulled out 12 months of bank statements, highlighting the monthly transfers in yellow. $12,000 transferred on the 15th of every month for 127 consecutive months. Total distributions to date, $1.5 million. Eleanor was reading over my shoulder. James, these statements show direct deposits to accounts in Victoria's name. Correct. Her checking account, savings account, credit card payments, car loan, insurance premiums, rent, utilities, every expense she's had as an adult has been covered by this trust. I pulled out the next set of documents. Her actual account statements, which I'd been receiving as the trust's administrator. Her BMW payment, $1,247 monthly. Her downtown loft, $4,200 monthly. Her American Express card, averaging $3,800 monthly. All paid directly from the trust. Vicky was staring at the papers like they were written in a foreign language. This is impossible, she said. Thomas manages my investments. He shows me the performance reports. Does he? I pulled out another folder. Thomas, would you like to see the actual investment statements? The ones that show you've never had access to any accounts in Victoria's name? Thomas said nothing. Or perhaps you'd like to explain how you've been generating 38% returns on money you've never actually managed? Catherine found her voice. James, why didn't you tell us? Why the secrecy? Because, I said, looking directly at Vicky, Grandma Helen's will was very specific about the purpose of this inheritance. It was meant to teach responsibility, not enable entitlement. Anonymous support was supposed to be temporary, just until Victoria demonstrated she understood the value of hard work and gratitude. I pulled out my phone. Unfortunately, after tonight's performance, I don't think she's learned those lessons. In fact, I think the anonymous support has achieved the opposite of what Grandma Helen intended. Eleanor nodded slowly. So what happens now? I looked around the table one more time, at my daughter, who'd just spent the evening publicly destroying my reputation while living entirely on money I'd provided. At Thomas, who'd claimed credit for financial success he'd never achieved. At Catherine, who'd perpetuated a lie for nearly a decade. Now, I said, pulling up my banking app, I make a phone call. The number was already dialed.
First National Private Wealth Management, emergency after-hours line. Because according to Grandma Helen's will, I have complete discretionary authority over these funds, and discretion, as Victoria just taught everyone in this room, is based on character. My finger hovered over the call button. "Dad," Vicky said, her voice barely audible. "What are you doing?" "Teaching you the lesson you should have learned years ago." I pressed call. "Emergency services, this is Patricia speaking." I put the phone on speaker so everyone could hear. "Patricia, this is James Wilson, account holder for the Wilson Family Trust, account number ending in 4829. "Good evening, Mr. Wilson. How can I help you?" "I need to execute an immediate freeze on all discretionary distributions from the Victoria Wilson subaccount, effective immediately." "Certainly, sir. Can you confirm your identity with the security questions we have on file?" The entire room was listening to every word. Vicky was gripping the edge of the table. "My grandmother's maiden name was Henderson. The original trust was established in March of 2001. The current principal balance is $8.3,247,000. "Thank you, Mr. Wilson. I'm pulling up the Victoria Wilson discretionary account now. This account currently has automatic monthly distributions of $12,000 scheduled for the 15th of each month. You want to freeze all automatic distributions?" "Correct. And I need to cancel all authorized recurring payments connected to this account." Vicky made a small sound, almost like a whimper. "I see the following recurring payments. BMW Financial Services, $1,247 monthly. Desert Ridge Properties, $4,200 monthly. American Express, variable monthly. State Farm Insurance, $347 monthly. Should I cancel all of these?" "All of them?" "Mr. Wilson, this is a substantial change. Once I execute this freeze, the account holder will no longer have access to these funds." "Are you certain?" "Completely certain." Patricia's voice came through the speaker with perfect clarity. "Very well. I'm executing the freeze now. All automatic distributions canceled. All recurring payment authorizations revoked. The account holder will receive notification via text message and email within 60 seconds. As if on cue, Vicky's phone buzzed, then buzzed again, then started buzzing continuously. She looked at the screen, her face going from white to green. "Account alert," she read aloud, her voice shaking. "Monthly distribution canceled. BMW payment declined. Rent payment declined. Credit card payment declined." More buzzing. "American Express declined. Insurance payment declined. Utility payment scheduled for tomorrow declined." Thomas grabbed the phone from her hands to see for himself. His face went ashen. "Patricia," I continued, "please also note in the account that discretionary distributions are suspended pending a comprehensive review of the beneficiary's character and gratitude levels, as stipulated in the original trust documents." "Understood, Mr. Wilson. I've made that notation. Is there anything else?" "Yes. Please send copies of all account statements for the past 12 months to this address." I gave her Dr. Harrison's office address at the country club. "The account holder has been claiming these funds represent her personal financial success. I think it's important that our mutual friends have accurate information." Dr. Harrison's eyebrows shot up, but he nodded approval. "Those will go out in tomorrow's mail, Mr. Wilson." "Perfect. Thank you, Patricia." I hung up the phone. The silence in the dining room was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop across marble floors. Vicky was staring at her phone as notification after notification continued pouring in. Her entire financial world was collapsing in real time in front of 40-plus witnesses. "Dad," she whispered, "you can't do this." "Can't I?" I pulled out another document from the portfolio. "This is the trust agreement your grandmother signed. It gives me complete authority over distributions. Read Section 4 yourself." She grabbed the document with shaking hands. "The trustee shall have sole and absolute discretion to determine if, when, and how much income or principal shall be distributed to any beneficiary, based on the trustee's assessment of the beneficiary's character, gratitude, and moral development." Her voice was barely audible by the end. Eleanor leaned over to read the next paragraph. "Should a beneficiary demonstrate ingratitude, entitlement, or disrespect toward the source of their benefits, the trustee may immediately and permanently suspend all distributions without notice or recourse." Thomas found his voice. "James, surely we can work something out." "This is extreme." "Is it more extreme than watching my daughter publicly humiliate me while living entirely on money I provided? More extreme than you claiming credit for financial success you had nothing to do with? More extreme than 10 years of lies about who's actually been supporting Victoria's lifestyle?" Vicky's phone continued buzzing. More declined payments? More canceled services? The car payment that bounced? Your BMW is about to be repossessed. The rent that didn't go through? You have 30 days before eviction proceedings. The credit card that got declined? Good luck explaining to American Express why your payment history just ended. She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. But Grandma Helen's will had another provision, I continued. Eleanor, would you read the final paragraph? Eleanor took the document. However, should a beneficiary demonstrate genuine remorse, accept responsibility for their actions, and show authentic gratitude and respect, the trustee may, at his sole discretion, consider reinstating distributions on whatever terms he deems appropriate. I looked at Vicky directly. The lesson here isn't about money. It's about character. You spent this entire evening telling everyone I never provided anything meaningful to your life. Now you know exactly what I provided. The question is, what are you going to do with that information? Her phone kept buzzing. Dad, I didn't know. You didn't know because you never asked. You assumed. You took credit. You dismissed the possibility that your lifestyle might have come from someone you considered beneath you. I started gathering the documents back into the portfolio. The money isn't gone forever, Vicky. But your access to it depends entirely on whether you can learn the lessons your great-grandmother wanted you to learn. Lessons about gratitude, respect, and understanding where your blessings actually come from. I stood up from the table. When you're ready to have that conversation, with humility instead of entitlement, you know where to find me. The entire dining room watched as I walked toward the exit. Behind me, I could hear Vicky's phone still buzzing with declined payment notifications. I didn't make it to the parking lot before my phone started ringing. The first call came from Vicky, 2 minutes after I left the table. I let it go to voicemail. The second call, 3 minutes later, was Catherine, then Thomas, then Vicky again. By the time I reached my Honda Civic, I had 17 missed calls. I sat in the car for a moment, watching through the restaurant's floor-to-ceiling windows as chaos erupted at our table. Vicky was on her phone, frantically calling someone, probably her bank, probably American Express. Thomas was gesticulating wildly, trying to explain something to Dr. Harrison. Catherine had her head in her hands. My phone buzzed with a text from Vicky. Dad, please call me back. This is insane. We need to fix this. Then another. I can't lose my car. I can't lose my apartment. Please. Then another. I'm sorry. Please don't do this. I turned off the phone and drove home. My apartment, which I owned along with the building, was quiet. I poured myself a scotch and sat in my leather chair, thinking about what had just happened. The phone calls continued all night, going straight to voicemail. I listened to them the next morning over coffee. Vicky's voice, increasingly desperate. Dad, I know I messed up. I know I said horrible things. But you can't destroy my entire life over one bad night. Catherine, angry. James, this is cruel and vindictive. She's your daughter. She made a mistake. Thomas, trying to negotiate. James, let's be adults about this. What do you want? An apology? We can arrange that. More from Vicky. Dad, my credit card got declined at the grocery store. Everyone was staring. I don't understand how this works. How do I buy food? How do I put gas in my car? The calls kept coming throughout Christmas Eve day. Eleanor Hartwell called around noon, her voice amused. James, the whole country club is talking about last night. Half the people think you're a secret millionaire, half think you're having a breakdown. Quite the Christmas present for everyone. Dr. Harrison called an hour later. James, I received those account statements you mentioned. Very enlightening reading. I think we need to have a conversation about membership here at the club. Your membership, specifically. My attorney called that evening. James, I've been getting calls from Catherine Miller's attorney. Something about trust fund modifications? Do we need to meet? But the most telling call came from my wealth management advisor. James, we've had some unusual activity. 3 separate parties have contacted us claiming authority over the Victoria Wilson account. Catherine Miller, Thomas Miller, and Victoria Wilson herself. All have been informed that you are the sole trustee with complete discretionary control. Thought you should know. Christmas Day brought a new wave of consequences. Vicky's first call came at 6:47 a.m. Dad, please pick up. The BMW people came yesterday and took my car. They said the payment bounced and the account was closed. I'm stranded. Catherine called an hour later. James, she's here at our house, crying hysterically. You've made your point. Can we please work something out? Thomas called next. James, this has gone too far. She's learned her lesson. Let's discuss terms for reinstating the payments. But the most interesting call came from Dr. Harrison at 2 p.m. James, I've been thinking about our conversation last night. The country club has some committees that could benefit from your financial expertise. Perhaps we should discuss more active membership engagement? The status reversal was complete and public. By December 26th, word had spread throughout Scottsdale's social circles. My phone rang constantly with people I hadn't heard from in years. James Wilson, this is David Chen from Southwest Financial Planning. I heard about your situation at the country club. We're always looking for experienced wealth managers. Mr. Wilson, this is Sandra Rodriguez from the Scottsdale Chamber of Commerce. We're looking for new board members with your kind of financial background. James, this is Michael Johnson from the country club. We met briefly at the Christmas party. I'm wondering if you might be interested in some investment opportunities. The narrative had flipped completely. In 3 days, I'd gone from unemployed deadbeat to secret millionaire who was teaching his entitled daughter a lesson. Meanwhile, Vicky's world continued to crumble. Her landlord called on the 27th, demanding immediate payment of December rent plus January rent in advance, since her automatic payment had failed. Her insurance company sent cancellation notices. American Express closed her account and demanded immediate payment of the outstanding balance, $11,247. The BMW dealership confirmed the repossession and informed her she still owed $34,000 on the loan balance. But the real consequences were social. By December 28th, everyone in her social circle knew what had happened. The story was too dramatic to keep quiet. Spoiled daughter publicly humiliates father. Father reveals he'd been secretly funding her entire lifestyle for 10 years. Daughter loses everything overnight. Her Instagram posts became increasingly desperate. Sometimes life throws you curveballs and you have to rebuild from scratch. Grateful for real friends who stick by you during difficult transitions. # reality check # new beginnings # blessed. 0 likes, 3 comments, all from people asking what happened to her car and her apartment. Learning that material things don't define you. Sometimes losing everything helps you find what really matters. # life lessons # growth # authentic. Her follower count dropped from 8,400 to 3,200 in 4 days. Catherine called on December 29th with an update. James, she's staying in our guest room. She hasn't eaten a real meal in 3 days. Keeps saying she can't afford groceries. Thomas tried to help, but you know our finances are tight with the dealership struggling. That was news to me. Thomas's dealership struggling? I made a note to research that. She's not the same person, Catherine continued. She just sits there staring at her phone, reading old bank statements, trying to understand how she never noticed where the money was coming from. She found all the anonymous transfer records, $12,000 every month for 10 years. She's calculated the total, $1.5 million. And? I asked. And she keeps saying, I told 40 people he never gave me anything. I told them he was worthless. She's starting to understand what she did. The phone was quiet for a moment. James, Catherine said softly. She wants to see you. She's ready to apologize. Really apologize, not just to get her money back. Is she? I think so, but there's something else. Something I need to tell you. She paused. I knew. Knew what? About the money. About your grandmother's will. I've always known. The trust fund story, the investment success story. Thomas managing her finances. All of it was my idea. I convinced you to keep it secret because I thought it would be easier for everyone. I sat down heavily. For 10 years, I watched you sacrifice your credit, your reputation, your relationship with your daughter, all to maintain a lie I created. And I never said a word. Another pause. I'm the one who should be apologizing, James, not just Vicky. She learned this behavior from somewhere. She learned it from watching me take credit for your generosity and never correct the record. For the first time since Christmas Eve, I felt the weight of what I'd done, not just to Vicky, but to our entire family. The consequences were real, the lesson was necessary, but the pain was spreading to everyone, including me. 3 weeks later, Vicky knocked on my apartment door. She wasn't wearing designer clothes. Her hair wasn't professionally styled. She carried a manila folder and looked like she'd been crying recently. Hi, Dad. Hi, Vicky. She stood there for a moment, not sure how to begin. Can I come in? I have some things to show you. I opened the door wider. She sat on my couch and opened the folder. I've been working, she said. Real work. 40 hours a week at a medical billing company, $11.50 an hour. I take the bus because I don't have a car. She showed me her first pay stub. After taxes, I make about $1,600 a month. My share of rent at Mom's house is $800. Food, transportation, phone bill, I have about $300 left over. I listened without commenting. I've been reading Grandma Helen's will every day, especially the part about character and gratitude. I think I finally understand what she meant. She pulled out a handwritten letter. This is for you. An apology, a real one. I'm not asking for anything. I'm not trying to negotiate. I just want you to know that I finally get it. I took the letter but didn't read it immediately. Dad, I destroyed you in front of all those people. I called you worthless. Claimed you never contributed anything to my life, made you look like a failure, while you were paying for literally everything I had. Tears started flowing. But the worst part is that I believed it. I genuinely thought I was self-made, that my success came from my own intelligence and hard work. I lived in a fantasy world where I deserved luxury because I was special. She wiped her eyes. The money isn't mine. It was never mine. It was your gift, your choice, your generosity. And instead of gratitude, I gave you contempt. I opened the letter. 3 pages of handwritten acknowledgement, responsibility, and genuine remorse. What happens now? I asked. I keep working. I keep learning what things actually cost. I keep remembering that every comfort I had for 10 years was because you loved me enough to provide it anonymously. She stood to leave. The trust fund can stay frozen forever if that's what you decide. I finally learned the lesson Grandma Helen wanted me to learn. Some things are more valuable than money. She paused at the door. Thank you, Dad, for everything, including this. After she left, I called my wealth manager. Patricia, it's James Wilson, about the Victoria Wilson account. Sometimes the best lessons are the hardest ones, and sometimes love looks like saying no.